A decorated soldier's wife trusted him with her sister's life. But when a secret affair leads to an unwanted pregnancy, he plans a horrific murder to silence her forever. The military-trained husband uses his combat skills to execute what he believes is the perfect crime. But 3 days later, when search dogs lead investigators to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, what they discover inside leaves everyone gasping in disbelief and changes everything about this case of ultimate betrayal. Fort Carson, Texas, was the kind of place where military families felt safe, secure, and protected. The small town that surrounded the base thrived on the steady presence of soldiers and their families, creating a tight-knit community where everyone knew their neighbors and trusted ran deep. Rebecca Cross had lived in this community for 8 years, ever since marrying her husband Nathan, a decorated sergeant in the United States Army. At 32, Rebecca worked as a pediatric nurse at the local hospital, beloved by colleagues and patients alike. Her warm smile and gentle nature made her the kind of person people naturally gravitated toward, someone you could trust with your deepest secrets. Nathan Cross, 35, had served 3 tours overseas and carried himself with the confidence and discipline that came with military training. Standing 6 feet 2 inches tall with broad shoulders and calloused hands, he commanded respect wherever he went. His fellow soldiers looked up to him, and the community saw him as a hero who had sacrificed for his country. Rebecca often boasted about her husband's service record, the medals he had earned, and how proud she was to be married to such a dedicated man. The couple lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on Willow Creek Drive, just 15 minutes from the base. Their home was always immaculate, a reflection of Nathan's military precision and Rebecca's nurturing personality. They had been trying to start a family for 3 years, but fertility challenges had made that dream elusive. Still, they remained hopeful and supported each other through the disappointment. Victoria Martinez was Rebecca's younger sister by 4 years. At 28, she possessed the same warm brown eyes and infectious laugh as her sister. But where Rebecca was steady and grounded, Victoria was more spontaneous and free-spirited. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, which allowed her the flexibility to travel and take on creative projects that inspired her. Victoria had recently gone through a difficult divorce from her husband of 5 years, Marcus, who had been unfaithful and emotionally abusive. The separation left her feeling vulnerable and questioning her judgment about relationships. Rebecca had been her rock during this challenging time, offering both emotional support and a guest room whenever Victoria needed to escape her empty apartment across town. The Martinez sisters had always been exceptionally close, growing up in a single-parent household after their father abandoned the family when Victoria was 12. They had learned to depend on each other. Their mother Carmen worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, which meant Rebecca often took on a protective, almost maternal role with Victoria. This bond only strengthened as they became adults. Nathan had always been friendly with Victoria, but their relationship was appropriately distant and respectful. He would ask about her work, offer to help with household repairs when she visited, and make polite conversation during family dinners. Rebecca appreciated how well her husband and sister got along, often commenting that she felt blessed to have 2 of the most important people in her life care about each other. The trouble began in early September when Rebecca's job required her to attend a series of medical conferences in Dallas. These trips would take her away from home for 3 to 4 days at a time, occurring twice a month for 6 months. Rebecca worried about leaving Nathan alone so frequently, knowing how much he valued routine and companionship after his long deployments. Victoria, sensing her sister's concern and still struggling with loneliness after her divorce, offered to check on Nathan during Rebecca's absences. She could work from anywhere with her laptop, and staying at Rebecca's house would give her a change of scenery while providing Nathan with company. Rebecca thought this arrangement was perfect, solving 2 problems at once. What none of them anticipated was how this seemingly innocent arrangement would create the perfect conditions for betrayal, manipulation, and ultimately, a crime that would shake their small community to its core. Nathan had always prided himself on his discipline and moral character. He had resisted temptations during his overseas deployments when other soldiers strayed from their marriages. He loved Rebecca deeply and had never seriously considered being unfaithful. But something about Victoria's presence in his home during those lonely evenings began to wear down his defenses. The first time Rebecca left for Dallas in September, Victoria arrived at the house on Willow Creek Drive with her laptop bag and a small suitcase. Nathan greeted her warmly but maintained appropriate boundaries, showing her to the guest room and explaining his daily routine so she would feel comfortable in their home. For the first 2 days, their interactions remained completely innocent. Victoria worked from the kitchen table during the day while Nathan was on base, and in the evenings they would share casual dinners and watch television. They talked about Rebecca's work, Victoria's latest design projects, and Nathan's experiences in the military. The conversation flowed easily, and Nathan found himself looking forward to coming home to Victoria's bright presence. On the third evening, Victoria opened a bottle of wine with dinner. The alcohol loosened their conversation, and they began sharing more personal thoughts and feelings. Victoria talked about the pain of her divorce, how her ex-husband had made her feel worthless and undesirable. Nathan listened attentively, offering comfort and reassurance about her worth and beauty. Nathan found himself drawn to Victoria's vulnerability. Her openness about her emotional wounds awakened something protective in him, but also something darker. He began to see her as someone who needed saving, someone who would appreciate his strength and attention in ways that Rebecca, secure in their marriage, never had to. When Rebecca returned from her first conference, everything seemed normal. Victoria thanked both of them for their hospitality and returned to her apartment. Rebecca noticed that Nathan seemed more relaxed and cheerful than usual, which she attributed to having had company during her absence. She was grateful that her arrangement was working so well. The second conference trip in October marked a turning point. This time, when Victoria arrived, there was an undercurrent of anticipation that neither acknowledged openly. Nathan had found himself thinking about her throughout the 2 weeks since her last visit, remembering the way she laughed at his jokes and how she looked at him with admiration when he talked about his military service. On the second night of this visit, Victoria was struggling with her laptop when Nathan offered to help. As he leaned over her shoulder to look at the screen, their physical proximity created an electric tension. When Victoria turned to thank him, their faces were inches apart. The moments stretched between them, loaded with unspoken desire and danger. Nathan pulled away first, muttering something about checking the locks before bed. But the damage was done. Both of them knew something had shifted, and neither had the strength to step back from the edge they were approaching. The physical affair began during Rebecca's third conference trip in November. Victoria had been at the house for 2 days when a thunderstorm knocked out power throughout the neighborhood. In the darkness lit only by candles, their resistance finally crumbled. What started as comfort during the storm became a night of passion that crossed every line of trust and loyalty. The guilt was immediate and overwhelming for both of them. Victoria left the next morning, claiming a sudden work emergency, and avoided Nathan's calls for days. When Rebecca returned, Nathan was withdrawn and irritable, claiming stress from work was affecting his mood. But the pull between Nathan and Victoria proved stronger than their guilt. By December, they had established a pattern of secret meetings during Rebecca's conference trips. Nathan would text Victoria coded messages, and she would find excuses to stay at the house. Their affair became more intense and consuming with each encounter. Victoria justified her actions by telling herself that she was still emotionally fragile from her divorce, that she needed the validation Nathan provided, and that she had never experienced such intense physical attraction. Nathan convinced himself that what he felt for Victoria was love, that his marriage to Rebecca had become routine and passionless in comparison. Both of them were skilled at compartmentalizing their guilt. When Rebecca was home, they maintained perfect facades of normalcy. Victoria continued to be the loving, supportive sister, while Nathan played the role of devoted husband. Rebecca noticed nothing amiss, trusting both of them completely. The affair continued through the winter months, growing more reckless and emotionally complicated. Victoria began to develop real feelings for Nathan, while he became increasingly possessive and controlling. He would demand to know where she was when they were not together, and became jealous when she mentioned other men or potential dates. By February, Victoria was completely isolated from other romantic possibilities, spending all her emotional energy on her secret relationship with Nathan. She had stopped socializing with friends, turned down potential clients that would require travel, and arranged her entire life around Rebecca's conference schedule. The arrangement that was supposed to last 6 months was nearing its end, and both Nathan and Victoria knew they would have to make a decision about their future. The weight of their secret was becoming unbearable, but neither could imagine giving up what they had found together. In early March, Victoria made a discovery that would change everything and set in motion the tragic events to come. She was 3 weeks late for her period, and a pregnancy test confirmed her worst fears. She was carrying Nathan's child, and there was no way to hide this devastating secret much longer. Victoria stared at the positive pregnancy test in her bathroom at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, her hands shaking as the reality of her situation crashed over her. She was pregnant with her sister's husband's child, and there was no scenario where this revelation would not destroy multiple lives. She called Nathan immediately, despite the late hour, her voice breaking as she delivered the news. Nathan's response was not what she expected. Instead of sharing her panic or offering comfort, his first words were cold and calculating. Are you certain it is mine? The question felt like a slap across Victoria's face. She had not been with anyone else since her divorce over a year ago. Nathan knew this, just as he knew she had fallen deeply in love with him over the past 6 months. His immediate doubt felt like the worst kind of betrayal. Of course it is yours, Victoria whispered, tears streaming down her face. You know you are the only person I have been with. How can you even ask me that? Nathan was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the tone he used when giving orders to subordinates. You need to take care of this problem, Victoria. We cannot let this destroy what Rebecca and I have built together. Victoria felt her heart shatter. The man she thought loved her, the man she had risked everything for, was treating her pregnancy like a military operation that needed to be contained and neutralized. She had expected him to be scared, maybe even angry, but she had also hoped he might see this as an opportunity for them to finally be together openly. Take care of it, Victoria repeated, her voice growing stronger with indignation. This is our child, Nathan. This is proof of what we have shared together for 6 months. What we shared was a mistake, Nathan replied, his tone growing harder. I love my wife. I have never promised you anything different. You knew this relationship had to end when Rebecca's conferences finished next month. The cruelty of his words left Victoria gasping. She realized that while she had been falling in love and imagining a future together, Nathan had been viewing their affair as a temporary diversion. She had been used and manipulated by someone she trusted completely. I cannot just make this disappear, Victoria said, placing her hand protectively over her still flat stomach. I need time to think about what I want to do. Nathan's voice turned threatening. You do not have time to think. Rebecca will be home from Dallas tomorrow evening. If she finds out about this, it will destroy her. Is that what you want? To ruin your sister's marriage and happiness? Victoria hung up the phone, overwhelmed by the impossible position she found herself in. She spent the rest of the night pacing her apartment, weighing her limited options. She could terminate the pregnancy and never tell anyone about the affair, allowing Rebecca's marriage to continue unchanged. She could keep the baby and claim the father was someone she had met recently, protecting Nathan while becoming a single mother. Or she could tell Rebecca the truth about everything and let the consequences fall where they might. Over the next week, Nathan bombarded Victoria with text messages and phone calls, alternating between threats and manipulation. He reminded her of how much Rebecca loved and trusted her, how devastating this betrayal would be for someone who had already endured their father's abandonment. He painted himself as the victim, claiming that Victoria had seduced him during a vulnerable time and that he was not responsible for her pregnancy. When manipulation failed to work, Nathan switched to intimidation. He reminded Victoria of his military training, his knowledge of weapons and combat techniques. He never made explicit threats, but the implications were clear. He was a man accustomed to solving problems through force, and he viewed Victoria as a problem that needed to be solved. Victoria tried to maintain some normalcy in her life, continuing to work on design projects and keeping up appearances with friends and family. But the stress of her situation was taking a physical and emotional toll. She was experiencing severe morning sickness, had trouble sleeping, and found it impossible to concentrate on her work. The breaking point came 2 weeks after Victoria discovered her pregnancy. Rebecca called her sister, excited about a surprise she was planning for Nathan's birthday the following month. She wanted Victoria to help her organize a party, complete with decorations and a guest list of Nathan's military friends. Listening to her sister's enthusiastic plans, Victoria felt the full weight of her betrayal. Rebecca trusted her completely, loved her unconditionally, and was asking for help celebrating the man who had manipulated and threatened them both. Victoria knew she could not continue living this lie. Rebecca, Victoria interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. I need to tell you something important. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Rebecca immediately picked up on her sister's distressed tone. Of course, honey. Is everything okay? You sound upset. Victoria took a deep breath, knowing she was about to detonate a bomb that would destroy her family. I have made some terrible mistakes, and I need to be honest with you about what has been happening. After they hung up, Victoria felt both relief and terror. She had committed to telling Rebecca the truth, which meant Nathan's threats and manipulation would no longer control her. But she also knew that revealing her affair and pregnancy would devastate the person she loved most in the world. Nathan seemed to sense Victoria's changing resolve. His messages became more frequent and desperate, begging her to reconsider her decision to confess. When pleading failed, he returned to threats, reminding her that he had access to weapons and knew how to use them. The night before Victoria was scheduled to meet Rebecca, Nathan appeared at her apartment unannounced. He had been drinking, and his usual controlled demeanor was replaced by barely contained rage. He demanded that she promise to keep their secret, and when she refused, he grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. "You will not destroy my marriage," he said, his face inches from hers. "I will not let you ruin everything I have worked for." Victoria broke free from his grip and threatened to call the police if he did not leave immediately. Nathan left, but not before promising that their conversation was not over. That night, Victoria packed a suitcase and drove to a hotel across town, too frightened to stay in her apartment. She called Rebecca and moved their meeting to a public restaurant, sensing that Nathan might try to stop her from revealing the truth. What Victoria did not know was that Nathan had already moved beyond threats and intimidation. He had spent the night planning what he believed would be the permanent solution to his problem, drawing on his military training to devise a plan that would silence Victoria forever while appearing to be an accident or random crime. Nathan had crossed a line from which there would be no return, and Victoria was walking directly into the trap he had set for her. Nathan spent the sleepless night in his garage, surrounded by the tools and equipment he had collected during his military service. His mind worked with the cold precision he had developed during combat, analyzing the problem of Victoria from every angle and developing what he believed was the perfect solution. He could not allow Victoria to tell Rebecca about their affair and pregnancy. His marriage, his reputation in the military community, and his entire life would be destroyed if the truth came out. Victoria had become a threat to everything he valued, and threats, in Nathan's military experience, needed to be eliminated. The plan he developed was both simple and complex. Victoria needed to disappear permanently, but her death had to appear unrelated to him. He would create a scenario that suggested she had been the victim of a random crime, or had met with an accident while trying to leave town to start fresh somewhere else. Nathan knew Victoria's habits and routines intimately. She always met Rebecca at Rosie's Diner on Oak Street, when they wanted to have serious conversations. The restaurant was in an older part of town, surrounded by abandoned warehouses and empty lots that had once housed manufacturing businesses. It would be easy to intercept Victoria before she reached the diner, and the isolated location would give him privacy to do what he believed was necessary. On Thursday morning, Nathan called in sick to work, claiming a stomach virus that would keep him home for the rest of the week. He spent the day preparing, checking and rechecking every detail of his plan. He cleaned his service pistol, selected clothes that would not retain evidence, and mapped out the exact route he would take to avoid security cameras in the area. Victoria woke up in her hotel room that morning feeling nauseated from both her pregnancy and the anxiety about the conversation she was about to have with Rebecca. She had rehearsed what she would say dozens of times, but she knew there was no way to deliver this news without causing tremendous pain. She dressed carefully, choosing a blue sweater that Rebecca had given her for Christmas, and jeans that still fit comfortably despite her changing body. She wanted to look like herself, like the sister Rebecca trusted and loved, when she delivered the confession that would change their relationship forever. At 11:30 that morning, Victoria left her hotel and drove toward Oak Street. She had chosen to arrive at the diner early, wanting a few minutes to compose herself before Rebecca arrived. She parked in the lot behind the restaurant and was walking toward the entrance when Nathan stepped out from behind a delivery truck. "Victoria," he called out, his voice carrying the friendly tone he used when Rebecca was around. "What a coincidence running into you here." Victoria froze, immediately suspicious of Nathan's presence. She had not told him about her meeting with Rebecca, and she knew his appearance was not accidental. Her hand moved instinctively to her purse, where she kept her cell phone. "Hello, Nathan," she replied carefully, maintaining distance between them. "I am meeting Rebecca for lunch. You should probably leave before she arrives." Nathan smiled, but the expression did not reach his eyes. "Actually, Rebecca asked me to come get you. She had an emergency at the hospital and wanted me to bring you there instead." Victoria knew immediately that Nathan was lying. Rebecca would have called her directly if there had been a change of plans, and she would never have asked Nathan to collect her without explanation. The lie confirmed Victoria's worst fears about Nathan's intentions. "I will call Rebecca myself to confirm," Victoria said, reaching for her phone. Nathan moved quickly, his military training evident in the fluid way he closed the distance between them. Before Victoria could dial, he grabbed her wrist and twisted it, causing her to drop the phone. The device shattered on the asphalt, its broken screen reflecting the cloudy sky above. "That was not necessary," Nathan said, his voice still calm but carrying an undercurrent of menace. "I am trying to help you avoid a conversation that will destroy both of our lives." Victoria tried to pull away, but Nathan's grip was iron strong. She looked around desperately, hoping to see other people in the area, but the lunch rush had not yet begun, and the parking lot was empty, except for their cars. Let go of me, Victoria demanded, her voice rising with panic. Rebecca is expecting me, and when I do not show up, she will come looking. Nathan pulled Victoria toward his truck, which was parked in the shadows beside the abandoned warehouse. She resisted, digging her heels into the gravel and screaming for help, but Nathan's superior strength made her efforts futile. No one is going to hear you, Nathan said, his facade of friendliness finally dropping completely. And Rebecca is not coming. I sent her a text from your phone earlier, cancelling your lunch and saying you decided to leave town for a while. Victoria realized with horror that Nathan had been planning this confrontation for much longer than she had suspected. He had anticipated her decision to tell Rebecca the truth and had taken steps to prevent it. She was completely isolated, with no one expecting to see her for hours. Nathan forced Victoria into the abandoned warehouse through a side door he had broken earlier. The building had been empty for over a decade, its windows boarded up and its interior dark and echoing. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that penetrated through gaps in the boards, and the air smelled of rust and decay. Inside the warehouse, Nathan revealed the full extent of his preparation. He had brought rope, duct tape, and his service weapon. He had also prepared what appeared to be evidence of a struggle, including Victoria's purse contents scattered on the floor, and signs that she had been dragged toward a loading dock that opened onto the river behind the building. This does not have to be difficult, Nathan said, forcing Victoria to sit on a concrete block while he bound her hands behind her back. I have made it look like you were attacked by someone trying to rob you. Your body will be found in the river, and everyone will assume you were the victim of a random crime. Victoria stared at Nathan in disbelief, seeing him clearly for the first time. The man she had thought she loved, the man she had trusted with her body and heart, was capable of murdering her to protect his reputation. She had been completely deceived by his facade of honor and integrity. Rebecca will never forgive you when she finds out the truth, Victoria said, her voice steady despite her terror. Even if you kill me, the truth about who you really are will come out eventually. Nathan backhanded Victoria across the face, the force of the blow splitting her lip and sending stars across her vision. Rebecca will never know anything except that her sister was tragically murdered by a stranger. She will turn to me for comfort, and our marriage will be stronger than ever. As Nathan prepared to carry out his plan, Victoria realized that her only chance of survival lay in playing along with his delusions while looking for an opportunity to escape. She forced herself to appear more defeated than she actually was, slumping her shoulders and letting tears flow down her cheeks. What neither Nathan nor Victoria knew was that Rebecca had become suspicious when she received the text message supposedly from her sister. The message was brief and cold. Unlike Victoria's usual warm communication style, concerned about her sister's emotional state, Rebecca had decided to drive to Victoria's apartment to check on her, only to find it empty with signs that Victoria had left in a hurry. Rebecca was now driving through town looking for her sister, and her search would eventually lead her to the abandoned warehouse district where Nathan believed he could commit the perfect crime. Rebecca's intuition had always been strong when it came to her sister. Growing up, she had often sensed when Victoria was in trouble or distress, even when they were separated by distance. That Thursday afternoon, as she drove through Fort Carson looking for Victoria, that same intuitive alarm was screaming that something was terribly wrong. The text message allegedly from Victoria had bothered Rebecca more than she initially realized. Victoria never used abbreviated words or short sentences when she was upset. When her sister was emotional, she typically wrote long, rambling messages full of details and feelings. The message Rebecca received was only one sentence: "Cannot do lunch today, need to get away and think, will call soon." Rebecca had tried calling Victoria immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. She waited an hour and tried again with the same result. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Rebecca had convinced herself that something was very wrong. She drove first to Victoria's apartment, using the spare key her sister had given her months ago. The apartment showed signs of hasty packing, drawers left open, clothes scattered on the bed, and toiletries missing from the bathroom. But Victoria's laptop was still on the kitchen table, and her car was not in the parking lot. Rebecca called Victoria's cell phone repeatedly while searching the apartment, hearing it ring somewhere inside but unable to locate the source of the sound. She finally traced the ringing to Victoria's purse, which was sitting in the bedroom closet. Victoria never went anywhere without her purse or phone, which confirmed Rebecca's fear that her sister was in serious danger. Nathan had made a critical error in his planning. He had assumed that Victoria would carry her phone with her to their meeting, allowing him to send the fake text message after she was already in his custody. When Victoria left her purse at the hotel, she had unknowingly provided Rebecca with evidence that the text message was fraudulent. Rebecca called the police, but they were reluctant to treat Victoria as a missing person since she was an adult who had apparently left voluntarily. The desk sergeant suggested that Victoria might have simply decided to leave town impulsively and told Rebecca to wait 48 hours before filing an official report. Frustrated by the police response, Rebecca decided to search for Victoria herself. She drove to Rosie's diner, where they had planned to meet, and spoke with the manager. The manager remembered Rebecca from previous visits, but said he had not seen Victoria that day. As Rebecca sat in her car outside the diner, trying to decide where to search next, she noticed Nathan's truck parked in the lot behind the abandoned warehouse across the street. She recognized the vehicle immediately. Nathan had owned the same blue Ford pickup since before their marriage, and she had ridden in it hundreds of times. Rebecca felt a wave of relief. Assuming that Nathan was helping search for Victoria, she walked across the street to find him, calling his name as she approached the warehouse. When he did not respond, she tried the side door and found it unlocked. Inside the warehouse, Rebecca heard voices coming from deeper in the building. She moved quietly toward the sound, expecting to find Nathan questioning someone who might have seen Victoria. Instead, she heard her husband's voice saying words that made her blood run cold. "I told you this would be easier if you cooperated," Nathan was saying. "Now I have to make this look more convincing." Rebecca crept closer, staying in the shadows behind a stack of old machinery. When she peered around the corner, she saw a sight that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Victoria was tied to a concrete pillar, her face bloody and her eyes wide with terror. Nathan stood over her with his service pistol in his hand. Rebecca realized instantly that her husband and sister had been having an affair, and that Nathan was planning to murder Victoria to keep their secret. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow, but her protective instincts for Victoria overrode her emotional shock. Rebecca had her cell phone with her, and she immediately dialed 911 while staying hidden. When the dispatcher answered, Rebecca whispered her location and said there was an armed man holding a woman hostage in the warehouse. She provided Nathan's name and description, then remained on the line as instructed. While waiting for police to arrive, Rebecca looked around for something she could use as a weapon. Nathan's military training made him dangerous, but Rebecca was not going to let him murder her sister while she hid in the shadows. She found a piece of rusty pipe and positioned herself behind Nathan, waiting for the right moment to act. Her heart was pounding so hard she was afraid Nathan would hear it, but she forced herself to remain calm and focused. Nathan was explaining to Victoria how he planned to stage her death when Rebecca stepped out of the shadows behind him. "Put the gun down, Nathan," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite her terror. Nathan spun around, his face going white when he saw his wife. For a moment he seemed frozen by shock and indecision. Victoria used his distraction to work at the ropes binding her wrists, which Nathan had not tied as securely as he thought. "Rebecca," Nathan said, lowering the gun slightly, "this is not what it looks like." "It looks like you are about to murder my sister," Rebecca replied, stepping closer. "It looks like you have been having an affair with Victoria, and now you want to kill her to cover it up." Nathan's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, guilt, anger, and finally a cold calculation that terrified Rebecca. She realized that her husband was considering whether he needed to kill her as well to protect his secret. "You were not supposed to be here," Nathan said, raising the gun again. "This could have been simple, but now you have complicated everything." Victoria had managed to free her hands and was working on the ropes around her ankles. She caught Rebecca's eye and nodded slightly, indicating she was ready to move when the opportunity presented itself. The sound of sirens in the distance made Nathan's head turn toward the warehouse entrance. Rebecca had called for help, which meant his careful plan was falling apart. He had perhaps minutes before police surrounded the building. "You called the police," Nathan said, his voice filled with rage. "You have ruined everything." Nathan pointed the gun at Rebecca, his finger on the trigger, when Victoria launched herself at him from behind. Her tackle was not strong enough to knock him down, but it was enough to throw off his aim when the gun discharged. The shot went wide, embedding itself in the warehouse wall as Nathan and Victoria struggled for control of the weapon. Rebecca rushed forward to help her sister, and the three of them fought desperately for possession of the gun. Nathan's superior strength was giving him an advantage when police burst through the warehouse door, shouting commands and pointing their weapons at the group. Nathan immediately released the gun and raised his hands, switching back to his soldier persona and following police orders precisely. Victoria collapsed to the floor, exhausted and injured but alive. Rebecca knelt beside her sister, holding her close while police secured the scene and arrested Nathan. As paramedics treated Victoria's injuries, she whispered to Rebecca the full truth about their affair and her pregnancy. Rebecca's heart broke for her sister's pain and manipulation, but she felt overwhelming relief that Victoria had survived Nathan's attempt to silence her forever. Nathan was led away in handcuffs, his military career and reputation destroyed by his own actions. The man Rebecca had thought she married, the man she had trusted and loved, had revealed himself to be a manipulator and would-be murderer willing to kill to protect his image. The aftermath of Nathan's arrest sent shockwaves through the Fort Carson community. A decorated soldier, respected by his peers and trusted by his neighbors, had been exposed as an adulterer and attempted murderer. The revelation forced everyone who knew Nathan to question their ability to judge character and recognize dangerous individuals hiding behind facades of respectability. Victoria spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from her physical injuries and the trauma of her near-death experience. The doctors confirmed that despite the stress and violence she had endured, her pregnancy remained viable. She would have to make difficult decisions about her future, but she was alive to make those choices. Rebecca took leave from her job to care for Victoria during her recovery. The sisters spent long hours talking through the complex emotions surrounding Victoria's affair with Nathan, her pregnancy, and the betrayal they had both experienced. Rebecca's initial anger about the affair was overwhelmed by her relief that Victoria had survived and her horror at Nathan's willingness to commit murder. "I understand why you were attracted to him," Rebecca told Victoria one evening as they sat together on the hospital bed. "Nathan can be charming and attentive when he wants something. I fell for those same qualities when we first met." Victoria wept as she described how Nathan had manipulated her vulnerability after her divorce, making her feel desired and valued while secretly planning to discard her when their affair became inconvenient. She had mistaken his possessiveness for love and his control for protection. "I thought he cared about me," Victoria said. "I thought what we had was real, but I was just a temporary diversion to him. When I became a problem, he decided to eliminate me like I was an enemy combatant, instead of someone who loved him." The legal proceedings against Nathan moved quickly. His attempt to murder Victoria was captured on Rebecca's 911 call, and the physical evidence at the warehouse supported the charges against him. Nathan's military training, which he had used to plan and nearly execute Victoria's murder, became evidence of his dangerous capabilities. Nathan initially tried to claim that he had been trying to protect Victoria from unknown attackers, but the evidence of his preparation and the testimony from both sisters destroyed his defense. His military service record, which he had hoped would generate sympathy, instead highlighted how he had perverted his training to prey on vulnerable women. During the trial, more details about Nathan's manipulative behavior emerged. Character witnesses described how he had always been controlling and calculating, traits that had been masked by his military discipline and public service. Rebecca realized that she had overlooked warning signs throughout their marriage, mistaking his need for control for leadership and his emotional distance for strength. Nathan was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault. His military benefits were revoked, and he was dishonorably discharged from the army. The man who had built his identity around his service and reputation lost everything because of his inability to accept responsibility for his actions. Victoria made the difficult decision to continue her pregnancy, knowing that she would be raising Nathan's child as a single mother. She moved to another state to start fresh, away from the memories and community connections that reminded her of her trauma. Rebecca supported her decision completely, understanding that Victoria needed space to heal and rebuild her identity. The sisters' relationship, though damaged by the affair, ultimately became stronger through their shared trauma and recovery. They learned to communicate more openly about their feelings and needs, recognizing that secrets and unspoken resentments could create dangerous vulnerabilities. Rebecca filed for divorce from Nathan immediately after his arrest. She underwent counseling to process her feelings about her husband's betrayal and her own failure to recognize his true character. She learned that even people we love and trust completely can harbor dark secrets and dangerous capabilities. The experience taught Rebecca valuable lessons about recognizing manipulation and abuse. She realized that Nathan's controlling behavior, which she had attributed to his military background, had been warning signs of his potential for violence. She became an advocate for domestic violence awareness, helping other women recognize and escape dangerous relationships. Victoria's recovery was more complex, involving not only physical healing, but also rebuilding her sense of self-worth and judgment. She had to learn to trust her instincts again and recognize the difference between genuine care and manipulative attention. Her pregnancy served as both a reminder of her trauma and a motivation to create a better future. Both sisters learned that betrayal by trusted family members creates a unique kind of pain, but that family bonds can also provide the strength needed for survival and recovery. Rebecca's quick thinking and protective instincts had saved Victoria's life, demonstrating that love and loyalty can overcome even the deepest hurt. The Fort Carson community was forced to confront uncomfortable truths about how reputation and service records can mask dangerous personalities. Nathan's case became a cautionary tale about the importance of believing victims and taking threats seriously, regardless of who is making them. Victoria eventually established a successful graphic design business in her new home state, channeling her creative energy into work that brought her satisfaction and independence. She became a mother to a healthy daughter, choosing to focus on the positive future she could create rather than the traumatic circumstances of her child's conception. Rebecca remained at Fort Carson, continuing her work as a pediatric nurse and finding meaning in helping families during their most vulnerable moments. She eventually began dating again, but with a much deeper understanding of her own worth and the qualities that constitute genuine partnership. The experience taught both sisters that survival is not just about escaping immediate danger, but about reclaiming your life and identity afterward. They learned that healing from betrayal and trauma is possible, but it requires support, professional help, and the courage to face difficult truths about yourself and others. Their bond, tested by the ultimate betrayal and nearly destroyed by violence, became a source of strength that carried them both toward healthier, more fulfilling lives. They proved that even in the darkest circumstances, love and loyalty can triumph over evil and manipulation. If you found this account of survival and sisterly bond compelling, please subscribe to True Crime Village for more stories of resilience, justice, and the strength of the human spirit. Share this video with someone who might benefit from understanding the warning signs of manipulation and abuse, and remember that seeking help is always the right choice when you feel threatened or unsafe.